What does flow mean to you? Flow is a state of mind, a state in which a person becomes fully immersed in an effortless and continuous progression. To me, the ultimate goal in jiu-jitsu is finding that perfect roll with perfect and effortless flow. I'm Professor Hayden Martz, and this is the Flow BJJ podcast. Hello and welcome to the Flow BJJ podcast. Today we're going to do another origin story. We're here with Professor Kevin Eastler and Blue Belt Aidan, and we're going to hear his story, and we'll see where it goes from there. All right, guys, so Professor Kevin, let's start off with... let's get your background prior to jiu-jitsu.
All right. Well, I grew up in Maine, up in Farmington, where I was born and raised, and went after high school to the Air Force Academy. So I went out to Colorado Springs, which is where that's located, and the first couple of years kind of just tried to survive. Military academies are not easy, but grew up in Maine. I was involved in a lot of sports, mostly individual sports, like cross-country running, skiing, track, those types of things. But I always liked kind of like messing around, playing football or wrestling with my friends and that kind of stuff. So I think that's what ultimately led me to jiu-jitsu after a time. But yeah, I didn't wrestle or anything in high school, officially. Played a little bit of pond hockey, that kind of stuff. So just tried to do like all around athletic kind of stuff, have fun. And then I was at the academy, and we had a good club sports scene. So they offered a bunch of different clubs and stuff. And there was like this one day where you could go into this hall, and each club had their own table to kind of like recruit people, like, hey, come join my club. And so there was a jiu-jitsu club, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like jiu-jitsu. UFC, like we had a new guy come in the gym today, right? And he's like, how do you know about jiu-jitsu? No, I just watch UFC. Yeah. So UFC was something I watched with my dad. Like we're talking like UFC 1 and 2 and, the origins of UFC is something I would watch with my dad. And obviously that was impactful on me. So when I saw jiu-jitsu was offered as a club sport at the academy, I'm like, cool, I want to give this a try.
Nice.
And it was more like Japanese jiu-jitsu. Because this was 1996. Yeah, 1996. So it was a long time ago. I'm an old guy. So, that was before like Brazilian jiu-jitsu was a big thing at that point, other than Royce Gracie and that. But it was cool. My professor was a tech sergeant in the Air Force. He had lived in Japan as part of his service for a number of years. I don't know how many stripe black belt he was, but he was legit. Scrawny, wiry guy, but like, I just remember if he wanted to do a move on you, it was like nothing you could do to stop him. Of course, especially with the little to no training I had at that point. So we did a lot of groundwork. We did some judo, some throws, takedowns, and some weapons work, which was pretty cool. So yeah, that was my first introduction to jiu-jitsu when I was, 18 years old.
How long were you in the military for?
So I went to the academy for 4 years and then was commissioned as a lieutenant in the Air Force and spent another 9.5 years in the Air Force after graduation. Nice. Yeah. Where were you stationed, or would you move around a lot? I did. So my first assignment was actually in Los Angeles, California. And so there's a little unique backstory. So when I said I did track in high school, so I actually did that pretty competitively. And my dad got me into race walking, which is a track and field event that some people may or may not have heard of. But so I started that in the youth track program in Farmington. It's an endurance event, so you start with like a mile and then eventually up to like 10 kilometers when I was in high school. So that's 6.2 miles. I got really good. I was on the junior national team and traveled all over doing that stuff. So when I went to the academy, I took a few years off, but then learned that the Air Force had this thing called the World Class Athlete Program. And what that means is they allow you to train like full time if you're good enough, ultimately for the Olympics, right? So if you're like top whatever 5 in the country, they basically just allow you to do that as your assignment. So you're getting paid.
That's awesome.
As an officer in the military, while you're training full time. So I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that, right? Like, it's basically a professional athlete essentially, right? You're getting paid to train and to compete. So I started training for race walking again, probably my junior year at the academy, because I had taken a couple years off. And it was a step up to like the national level. And I started racing the Olympic distance of 20 kilometers, so 12.4 miles. And but I did pretty well. I started making really good gains. I think I placed like 5th or 6th in the country my senior year at the academy, and I qualified for the World Class Athlete Program. So that was 1999 when I graduated. Obviously, we were coming up to the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia at the time. So I moved out to California. My official base was Los Angeles Air Force Base, but I actually lived at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista, California.
Damn. Oh, really?
And it was cool. I mean, so
that's awesome.
And you got to think. So I was at the Air Force Academy, which is like the strictest institution ever, right? Where it's like, you know, got to wear a uniform around all the time. Like you can't go out and drink for the most part. Like it's very, you know, very well controlled. And then I get let loose in San Diego, California with a bunch of other athletes, and it was a blast. So we trained hard. There was a team down there of about, we probably had like 10 other race walkers that were living and training there as well. So we had a good team, which is pretty unique for race walking because there's seldom like a group of people doing it together. And then there were other sports there, rowers, and there's like field hockey, and a bunch of other events came through to train at the facilities there. And yeah, it was awesome. So I trained, and I ended up placing, oh man, I'm embarrassing. It was top 3. I was top 3 at the Olympic trials in 2000. But one of the secrets of the Olympics is not only do you have to place in the Olympic trials, but you actually have to have a standard, like an international standard. And for the 20-kilometer race walk, it's a time standard. So I had to get in a certain time. I had not made that. So unfortunately, I did not get to go to the Olympics, which was devastating. And so there was one last-ditch effort race where I could try to make the time standard. And this was probably like a month before the Olympics. And so my coach is like, you can do it, Kevin, you can do it. All my teammates were supporting me. And I do the race, and it was just not going to happen. Like, you know, I ended up dropping out. Like, I was done. The season was over. I was probably burnt out, to be honest. And, you know, there's a lot of details that I could go into around, like, what I learned from training and how I changed it eventually. But long story short, you know, I didn't have it in me to make the time that I needed. And so I remember walking off the track, and I call my dad. I'm like, you know, basically crying, like, I didn't make it. I'm not going to go. But I'm going to make the next one. I'm going to make the next one. And he's like, yeah, I know you can do it, Kevin. Just, you know, keep working hard.
Your dad trained you initially?
He did. So all through high school. And there's an interesting story of how he learned. So he was in grad school in New York City in the 70s. And he saw this guy walking around this track. And he's like, what is he? Watched him for a few days. It's like, I got to know what this guy's doing. Like, he's going around 1,000 times this track. So he tries to walk next to this guy because the guy's walking. He can't, you know, the guy's going too fast. So he has to jog next to him. And he ultimately learns that this guy's name is Shaul Adani, an Olympic race walker from Israel. This guy had competed in Munich and was one of the survivors of that the terrorist situation that happened in Munich. And for those who don't know, basically some terrorists came into the Israeli housing facility at the Olympics, took hostages, ended up, there was a botched attempt to rescue the hostages, and a lot of people died. Basically, all of the hostage athletes that were taken ended up dying in the rescue attempt. Really sad affair. So Shaul was lucky enough to get out before he was taken hostage. And he was able to make a phone call and basically alert, the authorities that there was a situation going on. And so he is still alive, living in Israel today. He still does marathons and stuff like that, and was a big influence on my dad, which ultimately led me and my sister to take up that event and for me to make the Olympics. So yeah.
For the people who might be thinking, oh, race walking, that's nothing. What sort of pace are you talking about? What was the time standard that you needed to meet?
So essentially I had to average under 6.5 minutes per mile for almost 12 and a half miles. And this is walking.
You've told me this before. Yeah. That's why I wanted to make sure
What are the rules in this?
So you have to have one foot on the ground at all times, is essentially the main rule. There's one other rule about the forward leg. The knee has to be straight when it touches the ground until it passes under the body. But essentially it's that 1 foot on the ground at all times, which is the main rule, which distinguishes it from running. Because if you watch a sprinter, especially like most of the time, they are off the ground with both feet. Like they're in what we call a flight phase, right? They're only touching the ground momentarily to, propel themselves down the track. So that's the big difference. And the sport evolved from these walking races in like the 1800s and early 1900s where people would get together and walk from like one city to another. So really long distance. And for some reason, and I can't explain it, it became popular back in that time. And these athletes were actually paid a lot of money to walk from one town to the next. And they would have, a lot of followers who would watch them. I can't explain it. I mean, walking is one of those things that I struggle to find a lot of excitement in it. Now, of course, having raced at the Olympic level and seeing, some real battles between athletes at that point, and I can appreciate it because I did it, but I can also see why people would not understand.
So for the average person, you don't run into very many people who can run a 6.5 minute mile. Right. I don't know if I know anyone that can, especially for 20 kilometers. So you're walking 6.5 minute miles for 12 plus miles.
Yeah.
How do you train that? Do you train like cardio? Do you just walk?
Yeah. So
for training,
we do like 60 to 80 miles a week of mostly walking. So like in the morning, I might go for like a 12 or 15 mile walk. And a lot of my training I did in Denver, which is at about 5,000 feet altitude. And I would average probably about 8 minutes per mile for my training, which again is not like I have trouble running 8 minutes per mile now at sea level. So I'm not sure how I did that at altitude, but you just train your bodies. And then often we would do like a light jog or some other cross training in the afternoon. So
a few weeks back when you mentioned race walking, I remember seeing someone. I was at the Y probably 10 years ago and seeing someone race walking, practicing on the treadmill. And I remember just like being in awe. Like you can't understand like how it looks until you've seen it. It's aggressive.
It's unique. It is definitely unique. A lot of, I use the analogy of swimming, right? Because everybody knows that there are different swimming strokes, right? And let's take maybe the most unique swimming stroke might be the butterfly, arguably, right? The butterfly is not the fastest way to get from one end of the pool to the other. But the Olympic swimmers who do that do it so well and gracefully, and they've been training their whole lives to do that, and they can go extremely fast. And race walking is the same way, right? I can probably get down to the end of the track faster by sprinting, by running. But when you're training your whole life for race walking, you learn how to do it really well, and it becomes like its own technique. So it is unique, and when you're going 6.5 minutes per mile, you have to be a little bit aggressive, right? You're moving. So.
So you failed to make the 2020 Olympics in Sydney, you said.
2000.
2000, I'm sorry. 2000.
Yeah.
And you tell your dad you're going to make the next one.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
All right. So I go off and do my normal Air Force duty, which at the time was in space and missiles. So I moved from San Diego up to the mid-coast of California, Lompoc, California, kind of north of Santa Barbara. Beautiful area of the country, by the way. And start training for a career in space and missiles, which is an Air Force career track. So they're now actually have become the Space Force. But at that time, the Space and Missile group did satellite launches for the Air Force, and also another branch did control of nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles. And that's what I did.
Damn.
So that's the assignment I got after training was complete in California, and I was shipped off to Cheyenne, Wyoming, to the missile fields. And we have a base there called F.E. Warren. And surrounding F.E. Warren for essentially hundreds of miles are ICBM fields, so intercontinental ballistic missile fields. So we would drive out to this location, and there's a building, and it's fenced off, and you have to like radio in and say you're coming in. Otherwise, somebody will meet you with an M16. And then you go in the building, and then you take an elevator for about, 100 feet underground. And that's the Launch Control Center. And you open up these big steel blast doors like you might see in the movies, like in Terminator or something. Open it up. The crew that was down there, they get relieved. They go up top. You go in. You lock the door behind you, and you're down there for 24 hours. And you're controlling the maintenance and the security and the operation of, in our case, it was, we had 10 nuclear missiles that surrounded our launch control center, so like in a spider web. And the purpose is, like, if there was ever an attack from Russia or whatever, like, they might hit one of the silos, but it'd be hard for them to hit, like, all 10. So it was about survivability. And then there were 5 other launch control centers, each with 10 missiles. So we had 50 missiles in our squadron.
And you're allowed to tell us about this?
Yeah, this is all sort of unclassified, I think. No, yeah. So, so it was sort of intense, right? Because here I am, 20 years old, with enough nuclear firepower in my control. Now, fortunately, it's very controlled from like the top. You need presidential orders, and there's a lot of training that goes into it. Yeah, exactly. But I would have dreams about nuclear holocaust. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's sort of scary. So,
did you ever have any like false alarms or test drills that really like?
So my first alert was right after 9/11 in 2001. So I wasn't down there when the planes hit. I was sitting at home, but they went, I think, to so the DEFCON scale you guys might hear. So DEFCON 5 is normal, like everything's peaceful, no problem. And you go from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. DEFCON 1 is like, oh shit, nuclear war is imminent. So I think they got to like DEFCON 3, which is pretty serious business. Like halfway to like, oh shit, we're gonna have a nuclear war. Besides that, we always had drills going on where you get like alarms going off, and there was a rack, a bed in the launch control center. So like so you have 2 crew members down at a time, and you're there for at least 24 hours. So like somebody can, take a nap if they get tired or whatever. And so you're trying to nap, and all these alarms are going off all the time. Printers are printing like alerts, and sometimes you'd have to like take action based on what was happening, and it was pretty stressful. I'm not gonna lie.
I can imagine.
Pretty stressful. But I wasn't getting shot at in a foxhole, so there's different types of stress you encounter in the military. This was a different kind, and not something I'd want to repeat.
Yeah.
And leading back to the Olympics, I was extra motivated to get out of that role, out of that assignment. And so I started training again. And while I was kind of balancing my Air Force duty, and so I was sort of part-time training. I trained in the mornings. I remember so we'd leave the base at like 8 a.m. to drive to the Launch Control Center. And you'd have all these briefings and other things that would happen. So I'd get up in the dark, 5 a.m. to go for a run or do some training before I would have to go out to my duty. And but it paid off. I actually got in really good shape. In 2003, I ended up winning the national championships. I went to the World Championships in Paris. Ended up getting 19th in the world, and I made the Olympic standard in 2003. Awesome. So I sort of checked all the boxes that I needed to make the 2004 Olympics in Athens. So once I was able to do that and make that time, the Air Force allowed me to go back and train under the World Class Athlete Program again. So the year leading up to 2004 Olympics, I moved down to I was in Fort Collins, Colorado at the time, and we ended up moving down to Denver, and I trained out of Denver leading up to the 2004 Olympics.
That's a high altitude to practice at too.
Yeah, and I liked that. So there's different theories. Sometimes we'd go up to really high altitude, closer to 8,000 or 9,000 feet. I liked that mid altitude of 5,000 feet because I felt like I could still have good intensity, but have the benefit of altitude. And for those who don't know, because of the lack of, or the less pressure in the atmosphere when you get at the altitude, there's basically less oxygen that your lungs can, take out of the air, essentially. And so what your body does to respond to that is it builds up more red blood cells and oxygen carrying capacity. And so you take that capacity and you go back to sea level where the air pressure is normal, and you basically have greater oxygen carrying ability, more oxygen is available, and your performance is better.
Did it feel drastically different when you went back down to sea level? Was it a noticeable benefit?
Yes, for sure. However, there's a whole science behind it, and there's an initial dip in performance when you go from altitude to sea level, and then it comes back up, and then it peaks out around 7 days after you've left, and then the effects start trailing off again. So you sort of have to time it right, but definitely you can tell a difference.
Getting back to your military, so when 9/11 happened, you said you were in the military at that point. How did that change? Did that completely change your life in the military after that happened, or?
Personally, no. I mean, I know a lot of people it did. A lot of people signed up for the military once that happened because they wanted to pitch in. I'd say I was already at that stage, right? I'd already gone to the academy. My dad was in the Air Force, so I kind of had military in my blood, if you will. And so for me, it was just a reminder that we have to remain ever vigilant. You need a good deterrent force. You need a strong military. And so for me, it was just, obviously a very tragic event, but just a reminder that what we were doing was important.
Yeah.
What do you do in a 24-hour shift at the control center?
Yeah, so we'd go down, change over with the crew, get the status update of what's going on. You do all these system checks to make sure everything works, right? Because you need to control all of these missiles, essentially. And then there may be maintenance that has to happen, so you have to coordinate that with the topside maintenance crew. There are periodic security checks, so you have 18-year-olds with machine guns that drive out to the actual silos and check things out. There were alarms and things around the actual missile silos, so if somebody climbed a fence, it would trigger an alarm. But more often than not, a bird would land on the fence or something else would trigger it. But we'd have to send out the team to go check it out. So you coordinate all those types of activities, and then you just wait.
So was there a particular reason why it was 24-hour shifts, just less turnover?
Yeah, I think they figured out that was an efficient way. In fact, right after, so you're there for 24 hours, you change over the next crew, you go home, and then you're back like 2 days later. And they figured that was an efficient way to do it. However, after 9/11, they had 2 crews stay out at the topside facility, or actually one crew would be underground in the control center, and the other one would be up top. So in the topside facility, you'd have like the kitchen crew, you'd have the security staff would stay there, maintenance personnel. So they're all like in the topside building. And then only the 2 people with access would go downstairs to, to the bunker, if you will, to control the missiles. And so during the immediate period after 9/11, they had one crew would be topside, and then I forget, I think we changed out every 12 hours or something like that. And that was because they wanted everybody to be that much more on
Crisp,
point, that much more sharp. They didn't, obviously, especially initially after 9/11, that we weren't sure the extent of other terrorist threats. So having another crew out at the facility lessened the exposure of, driving back and forth from the main base out to the control center. So there were some operational security reasons for that. But the typical and normal way was just 24-hour alert.
You're doing 2 or 3 of those a week?
Yep. And then, so you come back the day after your alert and you get to rest that day. And then the following day, you typically have some sort of training on security or emergency war orders or some way that, you have to do your job. And then the next day you'll be back out in the missile fields. So it was pretty intense. It was hard to train during all of that. So that's what I think made my performance in 2003 that much more special, was that I was able to perform at that high level despite all of the military duty that I had to do at the same time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So military, Olympics, and then somehow you end up in jiu-jitsu. How does that happen?
Yeah. So as I said, I had my first taste of it in 1996, 97 when I was at the academy. Fast forward, 2008, I race in the Olympics in Beijing. And
so you were in back-to-back Olympics.
Yeah, so I competed in 2004.
I got to pull this stuff out of you because you're too humble.
Yeah, 2004 in Athens and 2008 in Beijing, China. But by 2008, my body's getting beat up. I mean, all that training, all that time on my feet. And so I hang up the shoes after the race in Beijing. And now I got to find something else to do, right? I got to find some other way to fill that kind of physical fitness need. And so I start training at gyms in New York. And only when I was, okay, I forgot to mention, so I got out of the military, right? I finished the Olympics, I hung up my shoes, so I retire from the sport of race walking, and I leave the military at that point. Ready to move on and get back to a more normal life. So I thought, so I got a job with General Electric, which is where I still work today. And so I moved to upstate New York, to Schenectady, New York, and start working there. And every now and then I would go to our GE training facility in Crotonville, New York. So this is closer to the city, and there's some good jiu-jitsu around there. And I would train whenever I was down there, which would be like maybe once a year. I'd go down and train with these guys. And I was a white belt and wasn't really getting any better because I was only training like very sporadically. So I still had sort of, I was getting exposed to it, but not getting better because I was only training every now and then. And then we end up moving to Boston for another role with GE. And my daughter at this point
Is there anywhere you haven't lived?
Man, so
Wow.
a lot of places.
In good places too. Paris.
So we go from Schenectady to to Boston. My daughter is of the age where she wants to start trying sports. She's like 8 or 9, and I talk her into judo. I don't know who talked who into what, but she wanted to do judo, and I'm like, I love judo. It's a great element of combat sport. It has great ties with jiu-jitsu, etc. So she starts doing judo. She does awesome. I'm doing the classes with her. I get to like green belt or something. And obviously there's a ground game element to judo. So I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get back into like this jiu-jitsu thing. And we move again. Okay. So we were in Boston a year, then we go to Ireland. Okay. so we moved to Ireland, again with GE, another role with GE. And we joined judo club there. And the funny thing about Ireland is the closest judo club was it took us about an hour, a little over an hour to drive there through these narrow back country roads in Ireland. And if you've ever driven in Ireland, unless you're on just the main freeway, like the roads are super narrow and it takes you forever to get somewhere. So we did that, but then like the second year we were there, my daughter's like, I don't want to drive up there anymore. She wasn't competing as much as she had been when she's in Massachusetts. It just wasn't as fun for her. And so there was a jiu-jitsu club closer to where we lived. And so she joined that. And it was like a kids-focused club. So while she did that, I started training we were in Limerick, Ireland. So I started training at Limerick BJJ, which was downtown Limerick, Ireland, kind of legit. And I think they had an affiliation with like Gracie Baja or something. I don't know. But there's like legit, ties to all the big names that we know today. So I started training there a couple times a week. And that's kind of my entrance back into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with more gusto. And shortly thereafter, we moved to Houston. So another move. And I joined.
Like he's gonna move in like 6 months.
Yeah, that's sad.
And I joined. My daughter and I joined Gracie Baja out of Katy, Texas. And I'm still a white belt because I've been training a little bit more, but haven't been training enough to level up yet. And we start training a lot. My daughter competes. I'm training 4 or 5 times a week, and that was my kind of from there on. I was hooked.
Consistent.
Wow. Consistent. And before I left there, they gave me my blue belt. So we were there about a year, and then we moved to Greenville, South Carolina. And I joined Alliance BJJ in Greenville, and that's where I was for the last 5 years, and where I ultimately put on my black belt.
Awesome.
Did you ever compete at all?
I did a couple of times.
Yes, in the Olympics.
Yeah. So when I was in Greenville, we had an in-house tournament. So I think I was blue belt, and we had a sub-only in-house tournament. So that was probably my first jiu-jitsu competition. I had done some judo competitions also. And then I did the IBJJF Charlotte, North Carolina Open as a purple belt.
How'd that go?
It went okay. So that was my first real legit competition. And you guys know this. Like when I roll, I'm sort of slow and measured, and I like to take my time. So I've sort of always been like that. I'm not super explosive, but you get into, and Hayden, you guys know this, you get into an event, you got 5 minutes, and the other guy wants to win as badly as you do. And it's like an explosion and adrenaline dump. And that 5 minutes goes by so fast. And so for me, that was an eye-opening experience. I think in my first match, a guy did a fireman's carry on me. I ended up taking his back and stayed there and ultimately won on points. And then the next 2, I won by decision. So it was, close, and you never want to win by decision. I mean, if you want to win, you rather do it by points or better yet by submission. If it goes to a decision, then it essentially becomes a toss-up. But I was able to win the next 2 by decision, and then the championship match I lost by decision. So it was good. I got silver my first event, but I walked away from that thinking like, man, I got to change if I want to compete, I have to change my training to be more explosive, to be like, to be more focused on 5 minutes. I didn't do that because my focus wasn't competition. It was really just, more to learn the art and to have fun and to get exercise. So I didn't really change much of what I was doing. But a lot of my Greenville Alliance teammates were competition focused, so I would help them train. Mm-hmm. And that was the last competition I did, so that was probably 2 years ago.
How often did you train? A week?
6 times a week, 5 to 6 times a week. Yeah, it was pretty consistent, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's a grind, and you'll hear that from pretty much anyone who gets to be an advanced belt in jiu-jitsu is, not every day is fun. Sometimes you have to drag yourself to the gym and grind through it, but that's what pays off. That's what allows you to get into bad situations and know you can survive. And I was rolling with Philly Joe Gazzardo the other day, and I was just rolling out of a move in some way, and he's like, "You have no fear." I'm like, "Yeah, because I've been in these situations 1,000 times. Yep. And even if you catch me in that transition, I know I'm okay. Like I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to go to work." And that's what that time on the mat allows you to do, and it only comes with repetition.
And even if you don't get out, what's the worst that happens?
Yeah, so you tap out and you start over. Yeah. So what?
It's just training.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your previous school where you obtained your black belt at Alliance Greenville and your professor and teammates there.
Sure. So I was lucky enough to be able to train under Rafael Rosendo dos Santos. So he's from Brazil originally. He moved to the U.S. Probably 8-9 years ago. The owner of the gym, Billy Fletcher, was into jiu-jitsu. He was traveling down to Atlanta from Greenville, which is about an hour and a half, and training with Hakare, the kind of U.S. master of Alliance, the head professor. And they worked out over time to bring Rafa up and lead the gym, be head instructor at Greenville Alliance. And we're lucky that happened because he's a fantastic instructor, very technically sound. And so he runs all the classes there. And we had the ability to train lunchtime, early morning, late evening, because that was his full-time job. So between Rafa and then the other assistant instructors, we had a lot of classes that were offered, so you could get in there. And some people will go 2 or 3 times a day, at least for a short period until they get too beat up, because that's hard. You can't do that.
Wear you down really, really quick,
really fast. But it's also a good way to get good fast if you can stay healthy. But so yeah, the first year I was there, I was training probably 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week.
So you started there at blue belt?
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know, somewhere along the line, I just transitioned to going every day. I think with my work schedule, I had less travel with work for whatever reason. So I was able to be home more consistently and train consistently. And then I'm fortunate enough with GE that in my role, they gave me a lot of flexibility. I work from home now full time, and so I can set my own schedule. So I was doing a lot of noontime training, and so I could just go every day at lunch and just made it a habit. Eventually put on purple and then brown, and as I was leaving, I was really fortunate that Rafa awarded me my black belt right before I left to come here.
What was your favorite belt?
I think I think brown belt, because as purple, like you're still finding your way. You might not have that go-to move yet. There's still a lot you're learning. I mean, and don't get me wrong, you're always learning. That never stops. But I think once you hit brown belt, you sort of like, you found your niche to some extent, and you can work on that, and you're comfortable enough in your A game that you can go try something else if you want, but then you always have your A game to come back to. So it's sort of for me, it was a good belt. And to be honest, I could have stayed there for another 3 years, right? I mean, it's just, it's a good place to really refine your game. And for me, it was so far a favorite belt.
What are the practices like under an aligned school?
So we would start with some drills or warm-ups, kind of like what you guys do, shrimping and arm drags and those types of things. Or we'd do a pair where one guy's like doing knee cuts or something to warm up, go into technique, go into like specific training where you get in a position and one guy tries to get out of it, another guy tries to finish it, and then live rolls. And practices were typically 2 hours long, if you could stay that long. So yeah, a lot of rolling, a lot of hard. A Friday noon class was like an hour and a half straight rolling, and Rafa would pair you up based on your ability, and so he would pick your partners for you. And there would be days, many days, where as a brown belt, I was only going against other brown belts and black belts for 90 minutes straight. And so it was pretty intense.
So for perspective from our students, how big of a school was Alliance Greenville?
I think we had probably 200 students. And at any given time, you would range from a handful for maybe a lunchtime class, no-gi, maybe you'd only have 4 or 5. And to a Friday, you might have 50 people on the mat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And did you tell me once before there was 19 black belts there? Did you? Am I imagining that?
No, I think you are. No, I don't know. I don't know how many black belts there are. I don't think there were 19. So that's a number you probably heard somewhere else. But I think at this point, I'll have to go back and look. I think I was number 17 for Rafa, something like that. I could be getting my number wrong. He just promoted 2 more.
See, 19. I knew I heard that somewhere.
There, maybe you're right. You were doing the math in the background. You remember better than I, so you might be right. But there were really high.
Was there any specific people that became like your top training partners that you just gravitated towards and worked well with?
Man, everybody there was really top notch. So like we had our brown belt crew that would be training at lunchtime, and there's probably 6 of us who would go there regularly. And it was just those guys, just day after day, grinding it out with them. And some of the guys would, it'd be an even battle back and forth. Other guys would be like my, kryptonite, where I just couldn't get what I wanted on them. But that was a good thing about Rafa sort of like pairing you up, is that you got exposed to a bunch of different people every class. So you never got to really settle.
Every time I pair people up, it always has good results too. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's and it helps protect, like you get newer people or lighter people, especially if they're training for competition. You don't want a lighter person necessarily going with like the heaviest guy in the class.
Would he have high belts go with low belts? Or
Yeah,
was it
sometimes.
just within your color?
It depended, but he did a lot by weight class.
Oh, okay.
In fact, when we would do specific training or positional training, however you want to call it, he would usually break it up by 180 plus, 180 pounds plus, and then he might have, depending on how many people, he'd do like a 160 to 175, and then like 160 and below.
Very specific.
I completely agree with that. More so than belt level for
Yeah.
drilling. I think size is super important.
Yeah. So we'd get like that white belt who came to an advanced class or like a new blue belt who was like 190 pounds, and he would be in with like 8 brown belts and black belts. And you're like, sorry, dude, it's going to be tough for you today. But, but that's how you learn, to be honest. I mean, at first you just survive. You try not to get tapped out. You get your defensive game. And then once you develop that, you start to be able to go on the attack. And that's just the way it goes.
So how did the conversation go? Or maybe there wasn't one. Did Rafa know you were moving when he gave you your black belt, but he wanted to do that anyway because he knew you were ready? Or how did that work?
Honestly, I think it would have been another 6 months before I got my black belt had I not been moving. He knew I was moving, so I let the guys know, a few months in advance that I was going to be moving, and I didn't expect. Like I was like, maybe, but I don't think I'm ready, but maybe because I'm leaving. And then the day at class was just a normal day, like normal training. Nothing special. I'm looking for him, like, is he hiding a belt somewhere? He ended up having my belt on him. He had tied it on himself. So like deceit. So he, at the end of the class, he goes through the speech of like, I'm going to miss Kevin, et cetera. He's been a great partner, et cetera. And then it seems like it's wrapping up, like, okay, that's it. Thanks, guys. And then he pulls the belt off him, and he's like, I'm like, oh. So yeah, it was special. But honestly, I mean, I don't think anyone is prepared to get their black belt. Really, it's always a surprise. You never really feel like you've earned it. But I do think it would have been another 6 months had I been still training there today. But even with that, I'm super grateful, obviously, that he gave me the black belt. He had enough confidence that I could carry that around and represent the Alliance name. So it means a lot to me.
What do you say to the people that truly don't feel like they're ready?
There's always going to be that syndrome where you feel like you're an imposter, right? And I think I just read something online to that same effect. Trust that you're being given the next stripe or belt because you've earned it. And there's always going to be a period where you feel like you're breaking it in, and that's fine. In fact, one of my best friends at the gym, he's, I think, a 2-stripe black belt now, maybe 3. He's like, hey, let me tell you, for the next like 3 years, you're going to feel like you've not quite earned this. You're going to feel like giving back your belt. You're going to you not feel comfortable. Like you're going to get tapped by whatever, purple belts, brown belts, blue belts, you're going to feel frustrated, but don't worry. That's part of the journey. So you just have to trust that you've earned it. Everybody has good and bad days, and you just got to grind through it.
It's not magic just because it's a black belt.
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
For the record, I think that's absolutely the right move on Rafa's part to give that to you before. That puts, were he to not do that, that puts both you and whatever school you move to in really tough spots.
Right. Right.
Because you are 99% of the way there, but now you have to sort of start over. Right.
Yeah.
And that's, so I think that's good. And yeah, for sure.
No, I was thinking about that after, and at first I was like, man, like, I don't deserve it. I should be another 6-8 months or a year or whatever. But I thought through that, and I'm like, well, it's special because I've been training under Rafa for 5 years now, and I've really developed under him, and it means a whole lot to me for him to award that to me. So I made peace with it.
Well, you wear it well, so I wouldn't be too worried about it.
Thank you.
So now you're in Maine with us. For those who do not know, how drastically does this school differ from what you're used to?
Well, let me start with the similarities. So great people, great head professor, clean facilities. And let me tell you, if you haven't trained in other places, it's always hit or miss. Like you go to some places and it's, sort of like not the cleanest and brightest place. Like you're in a dingy gym sometimes. Not the case here. Very well kept. which I love. You want to train in clean, new, fresh facilities. It's just makes it so much better. I think the difference is we just had like more people because we lived in a region with millions of people, essentially, in that part of upstate South Carolina. So when you have that population, you're just going to have more people. But otherwise, that's it. I mean, there's no other real magic. I mean, we had a high level black belt from Brazil, which is always nice. But the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu are being taught here just like they're being taught in Greenville. So I love it. And now that I've been able to teach, for me, that's my next evolution for me, is to transition from grinding out on the mats every day to doing more teaching. And it is addictive. And I think you knew this, Hayden. You didn't tell me, like watching people get better when you teach them. And for you, when you're coaching them in a competition, wow, there's a lot of satisfaction from that.
I would almost rather coach somebody to a victory than have a victory myself. Like to see them have success because you helped them.
Right.
You know, they put in the work. They did the required work that you told them they needed to do.
Right.
But it produced the results.
Right.
You know, and it's really special for sure.
Yeah, and I had no idea. I really had no idea that it could be that rewarding. So that's cool.
Even as little as seeing you teach a move at a class, and then like a week or 2 weeks later, you see a blue belt hit the move in a live roll, and you're like, you can point to that and be like, you did not know that last week, and you just hit it in a live roll. Absolutely. It's even something as small as that's super rewarding. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, I've been super happy here. I really love the opportunity that you've given for me to be able to come in and train and start to teach. And yeah, everybody's great.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you, man, for sure.
Thank you.
So, go ahead.
How do the styles differ? The technical styles differ?
Well, I mean, Hayden was just commenting. We have very similar styles, actually. So there's a lot of similarities. Rafa he's really good at floating. So he'll like do a lot of float passes, whereas actually I do a lot of pressure. So even within that gym there were different styles, but so he would teach a lot of that floating type stuff.
Size wise, how big is Rafa?
He is like 5'9" something around that, probably 170. So, and he grew up surfing in Brazil and can like have that movement where he can float, and he does it really well. He loves that quarter guard too, though, like that I play with, kind of making sure he doesn't let the guy get the underhook. He kind of goes to half guard and then quarter guard and bumps him with his knee. And I learned that from him. So he likes to play that game too.
Which is so strange because I play that exact same game and we had never met
before. I know.
That's
why I'm saying like the styles in jiu-jitsu, even given that geographic diversity, and it's, you see the same things. And I'm telling you, like we had, I said 200 people in Greenville, and there were some like you pick up things that your professor teaches you, but ultimately I think everybody develops their own game based on their personality, their body type, their athleticism. And that's what's great about it, because they can evolve something that's totally different from what's being taught generally. So that's cool.
And you really start to create your own game, maybe purple belts and above. For some people it's earlier, but if I taught the same exact thing to the same exact people for 2 years, they're still all going to have completely different jiu-jitsu games after 2 years. It's one of the things that makes it really fun, honestly. Because if everyone was played the exact same game, it would get boring pretty quickly.
Yeah. I will say that maybe the one exception is like the leg lock game. I think there are sim gyms that obviously prioritize that, and you can tell when you're rolling with people who have prioritized a leg lock game. We definitely got exposed to it at Alliance, but it wasn't the go-to. And in that lineage, they did a lot of footlocks, like where Rafa was brought up. But his philosophy was he wants to control the upper body, and that's what he liked and was very good at, is very good at. He can do foot locks, leg locks. He can get out of them. Like, you'd be hard pressed to catch him in a leg lock ever. But he focused more on the top. So
I think it's hard with newer people because they see this leg lock game at the height of its glory right now, and if you're a white belt or a blue belt's just new to jiu-jitsu and you're seeing like this is the meta right now,
yeah,
but it wasn't always that way, and
right.
It won't always be that way,
right.
So
right.
it's hard not to get tunnel vision when you're new.
Absolutely.
Like wanting to dive into leg locks and ignore the fundamentals, but the fundamentals still, those are must-haves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've found generally my leg lock defense game is improved because I can wrestle up to the top. So, I mean, you have control of somebody's top half of their body and they can't easily get a leg lock on you. Or if you can transition from them having your leg to getting up top. That's a good way to defeat a leg lock game. So, fundamentals. Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. If we could just drill that into everyone's head first, pass the guard first, then you can learn leg locks.
That's right.
All right. I think that's going to wrap it up for today, guys. Any final questions you got, Aidan? Or? All right. We will see you guys. See you guys next week. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Remember, you don't need to move fast. You simply need to move forward. Life presents all of us different obstacles. It's easy to give up. However, get up, smile, and put one foot in front of the other. Everything works out. I promise you. Tom DeBlas.